everybody. I'm Amy.
I'm Paul.
And we've got a very special Sideshow Con episode of the Comics Hall for you today. I know I kind of ruined the rhyme there, but it's worth it. We do have a very fun episode for you. We do have moderator Cassidy in the chats. Cassidy, let them know where they can talk to you.
We're live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and the Let Your Geek Sideshow Facebook group. So yeah, just ask questions, whatever. Don't be shy. I'm here.
Multiple ways to watch, multiple ways to participate. We have a really fun show for you guys today. I've been voicing all of our product-looking live streams, but this is a really cool chance. This is our special Comics Hall episode to celebrate today. We're diving right into the news in honor of our new partnership with Stan Lee's POW Entertainment. Sideshow will be creating licensed Stan Lee collector's items. We are so excited, and so we wanted to use this synergy to nicely promote the partnership, but also to recognize Stan Lee for his contributions to Marvel Comics, the ways in which he has impacted the phrases and characters that we know. So we will be taking a look at that. But continuing with the news, you can see the press release for our partnership with POW on our blog at sideshow.com/blog. And through that, we did announce we're doing the debut products are 2 fine art prints, one by comic book artist Bill Sienkiewicz, and then one by illustrator Ian McDonald. And then we also have an Unruly Industries designer collectible figure of Stan Lee that is on display at the convention today, and you can see that in our product-focused live streams.
Yes, they are absolutely beautiful. And on top of that, we have a really awesome Stanley Pin promo that we've got going on. It's such an awesome pin. That's going from July 20th through July 26th. So that's the full run of the con there. And it's
while supplies last.
While supplies last. I was getting to it because apparently I can't have 20. I've already asked. I can't have them. So it's when you purchase $150 or more of in-stock Marvel products, you will be able to claim the free Stanley pin during the checkout process. You have to add the pin manually to your cart during the checkout process to claim it. There is a $5 domestic shipping charge on that and a $15 international shipping charge on top of that. The Stanley pin promotion, again, does not apply to new pre-orders or any orders placed before the pin promo went live. So only new purchases of in-stock Marvel items will qualify you for that. And again, as Amy said, while supplies last.
Yes, and a number of these pins were included in the first and I believe second Sideshow Con swag bundles. They are high in demand, really cool free promo item for the show again, and it is in the likeness of the Unruly Industries figure. So if you guys have seen that on our streams, it is a very fun and energetic caricature of Stan the Man himself. So also, if you're looking for more Stan Lee merch goodness, by the time you are watching this, the Stan Lee Ragnarok 1/6 scale by Hot Toys will already be up for pre-order. He is up on our website right now. If you already have the Guardians of the Galaxy cameo in your collection, this is another great addition. This is, of course, the Sicarian barber who tells Thor that his hands aren't quite as steady as they used to be. He does come with a number of accessories, including the kind of barber hand blades, as well as a lock of hair from one of his previously satisfied customers. So you can check that out, see the full gallery on sideshow.com. We've also shown you our first look at the Excelsior fine art print by Ian McDonald and the Legends Stan Lee by Bill Sienkiewicz. I believe that these are currently available exclusively for registrants. You can check that out if you have registered for Sideshow Con, which is, if you haven't already done so, absolutely free. It only benefits you. You get perks. You get access to early live streams and exclusive content. So you can go to side.show/con to make sure that you are registered. And then finally, on our social media channels, we are running a Gleam giveaway, and I believe that only lasts for today. And there will be not 1, not 2, but 25 lucky winners who will... 25, that's a big number. A lot of winners who will win the Stan Lee Minico figure by Iron Studios, which is also on display at the show today. We have featured it on our streams. It's Iron Studios' own signature super stylized version of Stan, again, in his iconic green sweater with his shades, sitting in a director's chair, and his Excelsior motto and his iconic signature are featured on the figure, as well as decals. They're not actually hand signed, but it's a really nice tribute to Stan. So again, that'll be 25 winners. I think Cassidy can drop a link to the Gleam contest in the chats for you if you are interested in entering to win.
Yes.
But without further ado, that's our Stan Lee news, and I think now we've got an entire show dedicated to Stan the Man Lee. We're going to take you through his history in Marvel Comics, some of the iconic characters he created that you're probably well familiar with, but just want to make sure that you guys know the history. Things like the Merry Marvel Marching Society and the No Prize. Will be explaining all of these fun contributions that he has created and left a lasting mark on Marvel Comics.
And the Bullpen. We're going to get into the Bullpen a bit, which is one of the lesser-known wonders that Stan Lee did help sort of bring into the world. I mean, we've got all this kind of coming up, guys, and we're going to share some fan stories that you have all sent to us over there on the Let Your Geek Sideshow Facebook group, which today reached 33,000 members.
Congratulations!
Well, that's a lot of people. A lot of geeks. It's wonderful. Love you guys.
A lot of geeks all in one place. Very
all in one place. It's as close as basically con.
If you guys have your own favorite memories, favorite cameos, Stan Lee stories, put them in the chats. We'll be checking on the chats. Cassidy will keep an eye out, and we will be sharing stuff both from our Let Your Geek Sideshow group, and then if there's anything particularly notable from the chats that we want to shout out as well. But without further ado, I think this is a timely segue into Stan's history and how he started from humble beginnings. Paul, do you want to take us away on that?
Yeah. So again, this is going to be sort of a refresher crash course, because a lot of people know Stan Lee from his more modern appearances, but Stan Lee legitimately does have very humble roots in comics. Stan Lee initially broke into comics at just about 17 years of age, during a time, when Marvel wasn't even Marvel Comics. He was hired by Captain America co-creator Joe Simon, who, Lee started off as an assistant with him. He basically said that he would just go fetch coffee. He would basically, do all of the, as he liked to, jokingly say, I would do all of the creative big decisions that would eventually shape my career, and getting coffee and ordering sandwiches. So even Stan Lee has had to pay his dues.
And this was back in the days also when the artists were in-house working on ink and paper, so he had to make sure that their inkwells were filled.
Right.
He erased the final pencil lines from finished pages. It was a lot of this manual work that people don't really realize how comics got put together, and it's incredible the way that it started, and superheroes weren't even a super defining genre, and I believe that Lee's premiere writing debut for this comics house was Captain America #3, and he did introduce the concept of the ricocheting shield, but even then it was a backup story in Captain America #3 in a time when superheroes weren't really the zeitgeist, which is crazy to think about nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, he had Joe Simon in an interview had talked about how they're like, well, if we really wanted this thing pushed and paid for, we had to fill out these back 2 pages. So they're like, let's just throw this annoying 17-year-old kid who would play, I believe it was like a cello. No, not a cello. It was like a harmonica or something, and it would just annoy Jack Kirby, and it would just annoy everyone that came in contact with him. But a lot of it came down to, in Stan's own words, being in the right place, the right time, and taking a chance. So he wrote, as Amy had mentioned, the first thing that Stan Lee wrote officially, I believe, and he said officially because it's the first thing he ever was paid for, was Captain America #3. And that story, if you are curious about it, it is called Captain America: The Traitor's Revenge, which is an awesome story. I mean, I actually went through and I read those 2 pages, and it's so cool just to see the lasting effects that Stan has on, like, his writing is so consistent. But again, sorry, right? We kind of got a little tangential there, but so after about 2 years of doing something along those lines, over where he was with Joe Simon, it took about 2 years, and then Goodman, who was one of the editors there, he tapped Lee and was like, "Hey, we need someone to be the full-time writer and the full-time editor, and we need someone to hire artists. I guess you're here. No one else wants the job. Do you want to do it?" And to me, just even in those beginnings really says so much about Stan Lee, and that like he made the most out of a situation, which you will see in a lot of his characters. Like you'll see that when in his, I'm getting ahead of myself, but in his creation of his characters where he wasn't given a lot of time, wasn't given a lot of, a lot of people didn't believe in these, but he did. So he made the most out of a bad situation. That can really, summarize what Stan Lee was about.
And at his core, he was a writer. He had ambitions to write what he called the next great American novel. And this history of writing, I mean, he entered a newspaper writing contest, and the anecdote goes that he entered and won frequently enough that they had to ask him to stop submitting to give other people a chance. And so a lot of people see him now in the iconic status that he is. But he, by the time he was cameoing in movies, he had soft retired from the hard work of Marvel Comics for quite a while. But he was a writer, he was an editor, he kind of did it all, and he is responsible for an incredible number of contributions, not only to the fictional universe, but also the culture surrounding Marvel. And I think none more specifically than in the Bullpen, which it's hard. The Comics Hall, we always champion, like, make sure you know who your favorite writers, editors, artists, colorists are, follow their work, love them, cheer for them. And that's what the core of the Bullpen was when it did become. So as Timely Comics became Marvel Comics eventually, this was a place where the books were produced in-house. They couldn't digitally color, they couldn't mail in their pages as easily. And there was certainly no fast track email or Photoshop. And so the Bullpen was both the active ground, but also so referred because a couple of editors said a lot of bull was being thrown in that room based on their back and forths with the stories. But the Bullpen really was as recognizable to fans as the characters. And so I pulled this cover specifically because I'm a huge fan of the What If comics. The What If comics will be having an animated series adaptation on Disney Plus, but there is a very specific What If comic that may not mean a lot to people who aren't familiar with the people behind the comics. This is what if the original Marvel Bullpen had become the Fantastic Four. And so we see a much younger Stan Lee as Reed Richards. Saul Brodsky, who was an editor and writer as well at the time, became the Human Torch. Fabulous Flo Steinberg was the Invisible Woman, and then Jack Kirby became the Thing. And so this story, you do see there's an interior page as all these comics were introduced by Uatu the Watcher, and he introduces each of these people who worked really hard at Marvel. And Fabulous Flo did also pass away a few years ago. There was a great tribute outpouring to her. People like Marie Severin as well, Jack Kirby, of course, Steve Ditko. All of these people had a presence, and Lee worked really hard to make sure that people recognize them. And Paul, you want to kind of mention the nicknames where we got, because we call him Stan the Man Lee and Jack the King of Comics Kirby. Where do these nicknames come from?
Right. I mean, so one thing that is really crucial to understand is that Stan Lee really wanted the Marvel comic experience to be like a club that you know about and I know about, and we're in the know, and everybody else is on the out, which is funny because that's eventually sort of what it became. But he was so far thinking that he really humanized a lot of the writers and creators behind these books, because at the time that was not really done. Now, that's not to say that, Stan Lee was the first person to put, writers and artists' names on comic books. But he really, to me, in my personal opinion, celebrated that so much so that is where we get the creation of the Bullpen. And what's so great about it is, and we'll kind of get into it because Amy has a really cool little bit later about a marching society. But Stanley really wanted to make these characters, these artists and these creators as important and as big as the characters they create. So he started giving them all nicknames to sort of keep them in the know. So some of the ones that I pulled that are personal favorites are Jazzy John Romita.
And that was before we had John Romita Jr. And so that was the OG John Romita.
Yes, John Romita. Some of you, again, if you are a big comic book fan, most notable, at least to me personally, for co-creating Daredevil. So
I believe he also co-created Luke Cage with Archie Goodwin and Roy Thomas.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, John Romita, I mean, the Romita comic book gene is strong. We can say that.
The force is strong in that family.
It sure is. Amy, that's another show. You can't say that.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're all in the same house. So some of the other names we have: Gentleman Gene Colan, Jolton Joey Sino, Darlin Dick Ayers. I love Rascally Roy Thomas, Jolly Jack Kirby. That one's really fun because apparently he was. I don't know. Is curmudgeon a bad word, Amy?
No, it's not. I mean
Kirby was very focused. And Stan, like, there's a lot of interviews where they'd say Stanley he's on the couch and he's saying like bam pow, and he's kind of expressing how he wanted these comics to sort of go, and Kirby's sort of there just tell me what to draw, and he had his own vision the way he did things, so he was a bit more focused, and so him being the jolly Jack Kirby was sort of a play on that, because he wasn't always the jolliest, according to Stanley. He just was really focused.
And I think it's fun in the Fantastic Four Marvel Bullpen comic. He is the Thing, and Grimm is known for being the kind of like no nonsense guy from Yancey Street.
Right.
And as I mentioned, Fabulous Flo, as she was most commonly known, that did come from an editor's note. Saul Brodsky, who in that comic is the Human Torch, he was known as Saul Who's He Brodsky. Yeah. And so these nicknames were extremely fun, and I've seen them very gently and very lovingly used in Marvel modern Marvel comics in editors' notes as kind of that reference, but no one can really truly recreate that nickname experience. And you can see actually a full list of the Marvel nicknames for writers, editors, and creators on Wikipedia, which is where we pulled some of these from. But it is such a treat, and you see those in those editors notes, and it makes you feel like the creator. Now,
it sure does, yeah.
While we kind of wrap up the little bit of the history of Stan Lee in Marvel Comics, it's also interesting to note that after Captain America and after the wartime, superheroes kind of did die down as an interest. I mean, Captain America really was a symbol of hope and justice for people during a fraught global moment. But after that, there wasn't as much of an attitude towards like, okay, we need these high fantasy stories. So they did fade out until Marvel, and especially Stan Lee and his writership, really kind of brought them back to the forefront. And as we see these characters always kind of speak to their global moment, of course, we've got the development of radiation that coincides with Bruce Banner. And then the characters are always very informed by their world moment. And one last piece of this history section is Lee and his collaborators like Ditko and Kirby really popularized the Marvel method, which is a script method. There's in comic book scripting, and I actually, as a writer, have never utilized this method, but I know it is still used for some comics today, very rarely. But the Marvel method is one in which the writer I hear we're getting a reward code.
What is that? What is that? Oh, see, I hope you guys can see it. But
it disappeared.
There you go. No, zoom. These backgrounds do not. Okay, guys, the code
Cassidy,
is.
Throw him a bone there and help him out.
Please, yes, Cassidy, please help me out.
It's real. It is all caps Comics Hall SC. Go to sideshow.com/events/reward code to put it in there and claim your reward.
Yes, again, guys, that's Comics Hall. That's all caps. It's COMICSHAULSC. And go ahead and claim that there, and that's good for 10 minutes. So that'll expire at 2:30.
All right, so you got time to log into your Sideshow account, listen to us yammer as we do. As I was saying, the Marvel method of scripting is very interesting, and it places a lot of power on the artist's hands, in which the writer would give usually a sub 1-page plot outline, from which the artist would be tasked to create 20 to 25 pages of actual storyboarded story. After the panels and pages were all set up based on the plot, the writer would then, and usually Lee, would go in and add the dialogue. This saved time and allowed him to turn around a lot of projects. And so the plot would be Fantastic Four take a day off and go shopping. They encounter Galactus on the way, and then they stop him. That would be about as much plot description as would be given, maybe more, maybe less. And then the artist would be tasked with choosing the best way to pace that story, after which the dialogue would be added because there's already a knowledge of how the story goes, but they want to see the artist and how the artist paces it out.
Right.
It's not utilized a lot these days based on the tight turnaround schedules of comics and how many people are producing books. But I can say with certainty that the recent Jean Grey, Emma Frost, Giant Size X-Men by Jonathan Hickman and Russell Donnerman and Matt Wilson utilized the Marvel method. Hickman gave the loose plot, and as well it helped that it was an homage to a previous X-Men comic.
Right.
But then for what little dialogue is included in that comic, Hickman went in and only added the words after Donnerman and Wilson had completed the pages. So It's a very interesting technique that is pretty much patently known as the Marvel method. It's also known as plot scripting.
Patently.
Patently. There we go. Very, very, very clever of you, Paul. So when you do hear the Marvel method and how Stan wrote with the Marvel method, that is exactly what it would be. He would come up with an idea, he would pass off the story, and then the artists would turn around those pieces.
Yeah. I mean, and it clearly worked because at a point, I believe the Bullpen, Stan had said that the Bullpen could in fact push out a book that's full script, art, inks, in a day, because they would literally just sit there and using that Marvel method.
And again, they'd all be in the same place.
Yeah, a literal bullpen. It was, I mean, we don't see that so much these days because a lot of work can be different, be done remotely. But yeah, they would sit in the room and just push out content and push out, future childhoods of what what made people's lives so awesome. All right. So
do we want to quickly, Cassidy, how are the chats doing? I know that everybody is scooping up that code, so we want to make sure that people to grab that. But are people sharing their stories and comments?
Yes, I asked about, what stories, what memories, what moments do you have of Stan Lee? And we just have a lot of really fun ones. We have from Mark McHaley on YouTube said, Stan Lee and he happened to leave a convention at the same time. They walked together talking about comics, and he said that he was genuinely interested in his opinion and what Mark, was doing with his art. So super inspiring.
That's really cool.
I know, right? A fun one from Linda. And I think we brought this one up last week when we were talking about Comic-Con, but it's still really funny to me. She said that she was limping her way through San Diego Comic-Con 2012 on a Sunday and got swept aside by security for none other than Stan Lee.
Oh, man.
Wow. I feel like I feel like that is a convention experience that is shared with a lot of people just because of the universality of Lee's appearances at conventions.
Yeah.
100%.
We will have more time for sharing Stan Lee stories, and we did pull some from our Facebook group towards the end of the show, and I think Paul and I each have our own little personal Stan Lee story we'd like to share. So we will get to that. But now this section may be a little redundant, so we won't go too far in the weeds. But we did want to highlight, just so people know, because Stan Lee didn't create every Marvel character. Like, he didn't create Captain America, but he did create so many that are still so important, and we just want to kind of run that over so we can.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame that, no one ever heard of these and none of these ever went on to be billion-dollar movies, right? What a shame.
That Lee himself had a cameo in, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Well, do we want to start right up top, Amy, with maybe
perhaps Marvel's most successful character, Spider-Man.
Yes. So Spider-Man, again, had first swung his way onto the scene in Amazing Fantasy number 15. And I think, when we were going back and forth with the show, we almost grabbed, a photo of that. But I think that is an iconic image where if you're watching the show, you know exactly what image we're talking about. And I feel like all of the best first appearances have to have someone swinging in them, like they're swinging and saving someone otherwise, or like lifting something otherwise, you know, what's the point?
Well, I
But
mean, I do think there is some hammer swinging. There's some swinging through.
mhm,
I know there's some swinging in the X-Men image,
mhm.
but with Spider-Man, other characters who Lee helped to introduce into this universe: J. Jonah Jameson, Doc Ock, Mysterio, Mary Jane Watson, Gwen Stacy, and the Rhino.
Yeah,
Um,
and those were, I mean, there were a couple. There are so many more. Vulture, you know, all these other characters. I mean, if we could have a whole show on just what he created, honestly,
yes.
and we would still be an hour over time. But I really wanted to include, you know, some of the, you know, the other ones like Mysterio, who, you know, some people, you know, out there, you may only know Mysterio from you know, from the Spider-Man MCU films, and that's perfectly fine because that is exactly what Stanley would have wanted. He doesn't care, you know, how you find, I think, you know, this work and these characters, as long as you enjoy them and you enjoy them your way. There's no wrong way to enjoy them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there are so many Marvel catchphrases, especially as well, that lend themselves to. I wanted to bring up. Currently, the Marvel catchphrase is "This is Marvel, your universe," but
Mhm.
previously and most historically, it was Marvel, the world outside of your window. And so
Right.
that's why the stories are based in New York City. It was
Yeah.
they were reflecting the world that they were seeing. Stan always wanted to make sure that the person behind the mask was just as important as the face front.
Right.
And I do want to also mention we would be remiss not to fully credit the fact that Stan also co-collaborated with his artists on a lot of these, but we
Oh
do
yeah.
want to focus on Stan Lee, particularly for this show. But we do know a lot of people have their favorite artists who worked
Mhm.
with Stan Lee to create these stories because again,
100%.
one person alone does not a comic create, but
Sure.
we are focusing on the leadership and guidance of Stan Lee. He also said that the 60s and 70s were his favorite time to create comics, and they were, I think, one of the most prolific times
I
for
wonder why.
creation.
Maybe it's because a whole bank of amazing characters that would shape the world kind of basically started during that decade. And you know, none other, of course, than I think we actually have the cover of it, of X-Men. And in so Lee and the King
There we go.
Kirby.
There's some swinging.
There you go. See, more swinging. Lee and King Kirby teamed up to bring the X-Men into the world. That was in the fall of 1963. Again, so there were so many, so much between 60 and 70s in that decade that had happened. The original five, that's going to be Beast, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, and Angel, of course, along with Professor X, and Magneto. They all debuted in that comic. I mean, it's it's
It's
insane to see the lasting effect that just this one comic has had on all of comics and so many lives.
especially when you're at the point where you've just finished Hoxpox by John Hickman, and the ways in which the mutants have literally evolved.
Mhm.
But they began as this ragtag group, who many of them don't look as extreme as they do nowadays. I mean, like obviously Beast and Angel has had some transformations, and they've all
Right.
evolved as characters and also in their powers. But when it gets right down to it, it's a story of the marginalized in society fighting for acceptance and celebrating their uniqueness. And so I think
100%.
and then we see like when Claremont introduced the second genesis of X-Men, and we get to see even more ways in which characters take those lessons to heart of the
Mhm.
marginalized, the outcasts, the strange, pushing that forward. I think the idea of the X-Men is just such a powerful one in Marvel Comics, and I think it's no surprise that X-Men and the next group of heroes we're about to discuss, the Fantastic Four, are some of the most absolutely beloved groups of superheroes, I think, in all of pop culture.
Right. Now, Fantastic Four has, again, this can be highly debated even within the Comics Hall team, I'm sure, but it has been said that is what kind of brought when our I'm vamping a little bit, but when Lee and Kirby, you know, when they introduced the Fantastic Four #1 in November of 1961, this, they sort of explored otherworldly adventures and otherworldly stories. And to a lot of people, this is really what rung in the Marvel age of comics. And I think so much so, this is really what allowed Stan Lee and Jack Kirby to just write what they know. They didn't say like, oh, I'm going to give them this fake car and go down this fake street. This is really where we see them go full in to the idea, like they are in New York, they are driving a Ford whatever, and it's the world that they knew, so it's the world that they created, and they basically just put their heroes and their ideas in that world, and we really do see that in Fantastic Four #1. And
if I might interrupt for a moment, on
please,
that
yeah.
tangent of writing the world that they know, there's actually a very fun little resource online, and I don't have the exact link, so you can do a little bit of Googling. And I don't think it's not Marvel official, but someone has used Google Maps to track all the famous locales in which characters live. I mean, they've got the address of Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum. Jessica Jones is on West 42nd Street in Hell's Kitchen. And there is, and it's of course an extreme cluster around New York, and then there's Broxton, Oklahoma, and we get further out, there's the West Coast Avengers headquarters. But again, giving that sense of the world outside your window, you can map the Marvel universe onto our world, and I think that's a crucial part. I mean, there's a lot of beauty in the fictional locales as well, and we do, of course, even in Marvel, have like a fictionalized version of Asgard, and we have Wakanda, which they're probably really out there and we still don't know, but like, just these places that you can map, and that really gives fans the sense of like, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but one of the characters he created that I love most of all, anyways, she went to a college that I am well aware of and live nearby, and all of these, like, you can go, oh my god, that famous fictional character is an alum of this university, or they went here, this is the sandwich shop that they stopped by, and I think that is a gift that they've given to the fans that I think is more subtle, but carries through and continues to excite people and ground the characters in our reality.
Yeah, I mean, and we really see that, again, we kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, but other, awesome characters that, Lee helped co-create, we've got Doctor Doom, Uatu, Galactus, Silver Surfer, which I heard there's a super awesome maquette that just went up for Silver Surfer. And also
Sideshow.com.
Sideshow.com. But I'm going to kind of jump ahead. Me and Amy definitely don't have notes, and we're not prepared for this at all. So just kidding, we totally are. But I'm going to jump right ahead real fast in that, kind of going off what Amy was talking about, what they know is when he helped co-create Daredevil and he put Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen, he had really said, maybe, I've lived in New York and I know people from Hell's Kitchen, and sometimes it's not a great neighborhood, and I really wanted to give that neighborhood a voice and a hero that, even if it's fictional and it's in a comic book, that they can look up to. And so he really, wanted to inspire people, not only in the book, but just by reading the book, saying, hey, Daredevil can be a superhero out here in the same neighborhood that I'm in. Why can't I do that?
Absolutely. And so I know you've got a lot of characters to get through, so I think we should kind of just do the big hit points again, because people really know. Of course, we've got Iron Man and the associated family of like Happy Hogan, Pepper Potts, the Mandarin, Whiplash, who also is a 6-scale figure by Hot Toys, going up for pre-order this week. One of my personal favorites, Thor and his associated Asgardian comrades. And that is a character, of course, based in Norse mythology, but has an entirely unique history, all his own in the comics. I did jump over the Hulk. Of course, then a fun fact is his cousin, Jennifer Walters, was also created by Lee. And she is one of the last characters that Stan created at Marvel, and is considered kind of the last of the core characters from that era of the 60s and 70s, where he was really prolifically creating characters. She is the one who I mentioned. She graduated from UCLA in one of her comics runs. So it's one of those things where you're like, oh my goodness, like they ground these characters. And I love when like the West Coast Avengers hang out in Venice Beach, and it's like, you know where these heroes are, and you get that sense. So She-Hulk and the Hulk are incredible, important creations as well. Doctor Strange, Black Panther, the Inhumans, Ant-Man, and then a whole host of others, including Nick Fury and his kind of cadre of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Hawkeye, Peggy Carter, MODOK, Marvel. And I don't think we need to name every single one of them, but there is just the list goes on and on of characters that he created and wrote very famous stories of as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, another thing that you guys can just look up. I'm sure if you looked up Stanley, creations or co-creations, you can see that list for yourself there. I mean, we barely scratched the surface of it, and each one of these characters has an awesome reason as to why they were created. So
yes, and a lot of them do correspond to a current moment or a topic that they wanted to touch on. And again, so that really makes these heroes feel like they are a part of our world. And when we get to the segment about Stan's soapbox, I do have there is a nice little kind of testament to his own belief in the storytelling that they were exhibiting. But I do want to talk about a fun little detour to it's kind of fallen out of use in the Marvel editorial department, but it really spoke to Stan Lee's lighthearted attitude towards these characters, not only a firm belief in the goodness of the characters and the hero behind the mask, but also the don't take it too seriously, have fun attitude that sometimes falls by the wayside when people are struggling to collect every single issue and make sure that they've got the first appearances that'll go up in value. There is a thing called the Fabulous Marvel No Prize that was created. It was a fake award given out by Marvel Comics to readers, usually and originally sent to people who wrote in to point out continuity errors, typographical errors, things as simple as, in this panel, Wonder Man was wearing a pair of shades, but they were knocked off of his face when Hawkeye shot an arrow. And the next panel, he had them on, but there wasn't physically enough time for Wonder Man to pull out another pair of sunglasses. What do you say to that? To that, Stan Lee said, "Congratulations! This envelope contains a genuine Marvel Comics No Prize, which you have just won." And these were fake, or they were genuine printed envelopes, but they were absolutely empty. And sometimes people were so confused, they would say, "Oh, my prize wasn't put in the envelope, or it fell out." And then these became treasures. Of course, some editors said that people were trying too hard to get one of these envelopes and not focusing on the stories and nitpicking. But it really was a fun way to tell people to lighten up. Like if you you caught that error, congratulations. There's no prize for it. But you read the comic and you enjoyed it, hopefully. And sometimes there were specific contests for them. There is like, in the editors who have taken over since Lee's time editing at Marvel Comics, many of them have issued their own statements. Some of them believe that the no prize is a time-honored tradition and say, yeah, of course, we'll send no prizes to people that want them. Some of them say, no prize, no way. I forget which editor said that, but he absolutely declared no prizes, no way, because he thought that they distracted people from the experience of reading the comics. And eventually, Marvel did publish a collection of their most notorious goofs and mistakes, subtitled Mighty Marvel's Most Massive Mistakes. That was another thing that Stan and the Bullpen loved, was alliteration, man. Every Marvel Bullpen bulletin ended with like an alliterative title.
And it's funny, even that compilation of all of those books, people were up in arms about, because they purposely printed the cover upside down. And people were constantly, messaging in saying my book is upside down, and it must have just been an incredible time for them to just like laugh at all of the ridiculousness that was a compilation of all those no prizes.
Yeah, so I think that is one of the really fun testament. Now, I know we are coming up. We wanted to talk a little bit about his MCU cameos, but I do want to get to the Stan soapbox, and we can add the kind of MCU cameos to the fan section
totally.
At the end. So continuing on that, in the ways in which Stan connected with the fans, one of the most important ways was the monthly Marvel Bulletin that went out in the back of comics. But more specifically, there was a segment called Stan's Soapbox, and this was a monthly missive that he would use to connect with the fans, let them know what was going on, address issues. Marvel did reprint a number of these also when he passed in tribute. I do want to read this one because I love this one from a 60s issue of Marvel. Many of you unsung heroes have written to ask how we really feel about our own mags. You've inquired whether we take them seriously or just treat them as patently pointless put on. Well, just for the record, Charlie, we believe in our swinging superheroes. We created them. We live with their adventures, their hang-ups, almost 24 hours a day. We know them as well as we know our families, and better than we know Irving Forbush, and we'll get to Irving Forbush in a bit. No literature lover, our fearless little fables are not put-ons. To us, they're what's really happening, baby. It's the real world, it's the real world we have our doubts about, but that's another story. Till next month, then, face front. That's where the action is. And that actually brings up another one of Lee's famous catchphrases: face front, true believers, of course, Excelsior, which means ever higher, which and that's a Latin phrase. All of those phrases are they really contribute to that idea. I know that Paul brought up of like, you're in the know, I'm in the know. We share this
100%.
We share this experience. And so when he passed, sadly, in 2018, Marvel did run a series of covers that had a black bar at the top that said Stanley. And then in the back of those issues, they did reprint famous missives of his soapbox. And they said Stanley forever. And again, this one, I don't think I can read without tearing up, but basically he thanks the fans for making Marvel what it is. And he says, if Marvel's on top, it's because the readers put us there. And if Marvel makes a mistake, then you have every right to be disappointed in us. But we're not slowing down. And he says, on behalf of the entire Batty Bullpen, to true believers everywhere, we'll never let you down because you're the ever loving greatest.
Oh,
so that was, I know, it's like, oh, I'm going to cry, but
my eyes are sweating.
So if you have some of those comics from that 2018 time, you can see the reprinted issues. He also used it not only to directly discuss fan concerns about Marvel itself, but he used it to lay down the line on topics like bigotry and racism. That's one of his most famous ones as well, about that has no place in our comics. And he wrote funny things as well. I mean, like the soapbox, as it was his way to send out those pulses and reach out to the fans. And another way in which Marvel did that, apart from the no prizes and the bulletin, was a little thing that I wanted to pull aside called the Merry Marvel Marching Society. And actually, Marvel recently released a bunch of anniversary merchandise within the last year or so. And they did have shirts that said MMMS. The Merry Marvel Marching Society was a subscription kit. It was a $1 subscription kit that you could send away for, and you got merchandise. You got, I believe there were like stickers and pins and like a little notepad, but most importantly, you did get a membership card.
Yes.
It was signed by Grand Marshal Pro Tem Ben J. Grimm, and it says, "Let it be known, your name is a charter member in good standing of the Merry Marvel Marching Society and is thereby entitled to the adulation and admiration of all lesser mortals." I love that. And then on the back, the Merry Marvel Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the mags of the Marvel Group and to the madmen who put them on the stands. One bullpen, understaffed, indecipherable, with liberty and boo-boos for all. This was this launched in the 60s, I believe, in around 1964. And at some point, Fabulous Flo Steinberg did say that we were working 7 days a week just to open the subscription envelopes because everybody wanted to be a part of the Merry Marvel Marching Society. It even had a theme song that played at the end of some of those classic animated cartoons. And again, so many of these things, the soapbox, the marching society, the face front true believers, that idea was you knew the creators, they knew you. You were all there to celebrate the Marvel universe together. And now what a universe it is that I don't know if they could have ever imagined in that bullpen, Stan Lee and his team, just how big this would have gotten.
I mean, I absolutely, I don't think there was ever a ray of an idea at all that they thought, that they would be walking down red carpets and they would be seeing these characters so wonderfully brought to life on screen, on silver and, in the big screen there.
It did take a while. These
Right.
weren't immediately popular, and there were animated shows and live action TV
Oh
appearances,
yeah.
but this wasn't they and many of these creators didn't reach that acclaim that they did, but Stan Lee really became a symbol for how big this universe was and how many
Mhm.
people felt included by the ways in which that they reached out to fans. And I think that is such a key part in acknowledging your audience, being just as appreciative of the characters and making it genuine. I mean, it's one of those
Yeah.
things where you can tell that they had a love for these characters and that they did believe, like that soapbox said, like
100%.
we believe in our stories. These aren't just put-upons or put-ons. I'm sorry. We're not just doing this to make your dollar.
Mhm.
We believe in these stories that we're telling.
And I had asked yesterday, or every day at 6, we do a wrap up in the Let Your Geek Set Show Facebook group, and I said, hey, you know what? Let me know if you guys have any personal stories or anecdotes or anything about Stan. And I got a lot of personal messages about it. And if I don't have time to talk about all of them. I really wish I do, but really, what was at the core of all those was we all looked at Stan as a person. Maybe you didn't grow up with someone who shared the same interests as you. I mean, that's how I felt about Stan Lee. But I would see him on screen and everything, and I felt connected and I felt close to him. And so many people, said he was larger than life. We had someone say that they had worked in editing for a company that knew Pow, and Stan Lee pulled out a chair for him and said, "You've been standing there for 2 hours, buddy. Sit down with me." And Stan Lee never took himself that seriously, and he really embodied everything that he wanted his characters to be. I truly believe that everything that Stan Lee said he meant, and he meant what he said. And so many people out there again, and I think this is a good time now to get into some of the stories, Amy, that we
Yeah.
brought from the Let Your Geek Side Show group.
I do want to acknowledge, because we are getting some love in YouTube and like asking us to discuss. And I know I mentioned him, Irving Forbush and Not Brand F.
Oh, yes.
We're not I don't think we're gonna have time to run on that. But if you guys aren't familiar, check out Not Brand F. It was a satire magazine based on Brand X and the Distinguished Competition, and it is a way in which they parodied not only their own superheroes but the publishing of other comic book companies. And Forbush Man was a fictional employee of Marvel Comics who was the butt of a lot of Stan Lee's jokes. So check that out outside. That's your Comics Hall official homework for the Stan Lee episode. But yeah, I do want to make sure we have time to get to some of those Stan Lee stories, because some of them, I think some of the ones we pulled, especially the witty responses he had and the ways in which he could make a fan feel like you are part of that Marvel universe and like you are acknowledged is amazing.
Yeah, and I can read. So again, these are all from our Let Your Geek Set Show Facebook group that I'm sure Cassie at some point can drop a link to. But right up top, we have Matt Boccia said, "For me, I was lucky enough to go to the set where they were filming The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It happened to be the day they were shooting the graduation, and I noticed Stan outside his trailer chatting with two people who were with him. He was kind enough not only to sign my steelbook for the first movie, but exclaimed, 'Another Spidey merch ruined by my signature.' We took a photo and everything. He was great." I love that so much.
I like this one because you guys know at conventions, the autograph sessions and photograph sessions are so quick, and you don't often get to have those like really truly special moments. But the amount of wit it takes to pull off this moment, I think is it just warms my heart. Chris Surma shared at a convention photo opportunity. I handed him the hammer, Mjolnir, because he was in cosplay, and Stan said, "Look." And he said it like he was stunned, and then followed up with, "I guess I am worthy." We'll never forget that. And like the
my heart.
it take to just immediately make that joke, and the humility of recognizing like, well, hey, I guess I am worthy of Mjolnir.
Oh man, we have another awesome story from Javier Garces. He says, "I was in the vendor section of New York Comic Con talking to my daughter on the phone about the con. I see Stan Lee being escorted through, and I shout out to him, 'Stan Lee, you're excellent.' He stopped, turned, and said to me, 'Yes, I am,' and smiled. He's like, that was the greatest fanboy moment. I didn't need an autograph or a photo op after that."
And I love that these stories, they feel like an urban legend in some way, but like
Yeah.
a lot of people, so many people are privileged to have that Stan Lee story. And maybe your Stan Lee story is just catching the cameo in your favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe show or movie. Hazel Miranda also shared her favorite Stan memory was getting to meet Stan Lee the day before we got engaged at the Guardians Mission Breakout Ride. He gave us his blessing. His work is what brought Zach and I together, who she's referring to in the we. We were so sad to hear about his passing, but we will honor him at our Guardians of the Galaxy themed wedding by having Stan Lee cameos.
Oh, yes.
I love that his work is what brought people together, because I think that's ultimately what the Comics Hall, what we're here for. I mean, the Comics Hall brought Paul and I together because we realized we both loved comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'll never forget the truly soul-shaking cheer that rippled through the audience when Cap first picked up Mjolnir. And it's one of those things where we're all really distant right now, and that does suck. But those moments of these characters bringing us together, I think, are the most important gift of all that these creators have given us.
Yeah, and I think before we wrap up, I know me and Amy both have our Stan Lee stories, and I don't think Amy knows mine, and I don't know Amy's.
I don't know yours at all, so I hope it's appropriate.
Oh, it's totally appropriate. It's wonderful. So I was at the first ever when it was still Stanley Kamikaze, and it wasn't LA Comic-Con at the time. It was the first one, and I went with my cousin, and they went. He went and did something else, and I needed to make a phone call. So I snuck off behind what is the LA Conventions area. If you're familiar with San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con, they're artist alleys. They had one set up for a Stanley's Kamikaze. And I don't know how I did it, but I snuck back there because it was so loud and I only had service back there. So there's an exit right outside. It's like a pavilion. And of course, Stan Lee was just out there with his security. It was just his security, someone he was talking to on the phone, and right next to him. And it was me making a phone call, and I didn't even dial anything, but I started to take a picture of him. And I just hear, "Hey, you, knock that off, get over here." And I'm walking over to him, and he's on the phone, and he looks very serious. And he's got two very large men with him who are double my size, and one of them stopped me right before I got about halfway, and he said, "Look, pal, you don't touch Stan. Stan touches you. If you touch Stan, we touch you. Got it?" And so I just remember being so scared, and Stanley was laughing his head off as these guys were intimidating me, and he didn't even really talk to me. He was on the phone, and he's like, "Hey, you remember that hair thing I was talking about? Yeah, some guy's got it." And he touched my hair and ruffled it, and he's like, and he didn't even acknowledge me. He just touched my hair, ruffled it, and then he turned around, and basically he had just left. He's like, yeah, and it was sort of surreal in that while I was there and I was freaking out, and the guy asked me to put my phone away, so I had it in my pocket, and he touched my hair, and then the security guard waited a foot in front of me. He was not social distancing at the time while Stanley left, and then once they were far enough away, then the security guard left me and I had to go back inside.
Is that why your hair is so perfectly coiffed? Is that a superhero origin story?
That is exactly what I tell people all the time, and I don't know if me and Amy have ever had. Me and Amy have talked a lot about comics and nerdy stuff. I don't know if this has ever come up, but my hair is blessed by Stan Lee.
Oh my goodness!
So, boom.
Oh my goodness! All right, my story's not, I think, as mythically crazy as that. But I was actually touring colleges in the Midwest. I went, I tried to kill two birds with one stone, and I went to a Harry Potter convention in Chicago while looking at universities. Ended up going to none of them. I didn't really like the area back. I mean, it was a lovely place, not for me to stay for school. And so the Harry Potter convention was over that weekend, but there was a Wizard World convention in Chicago on the same weekend. So we get through O'Hare Airport. I'm not huge on flying. It's just a crazy situation. And my dad leaves. He goes to go get a snack. And I'm sitting there and I hear some girls kind of rustling like, ah! And I was kind of like, okay, what's going on? And then I see them come up And then they're kind of standing around for a little bit, and then they're leaving. And one of the girls is crying, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what happened? And she goes, that's Stan Lee. That's Stan Lee. And I look, and Stan he's got, of course, his glasses, but like a yellow sweater on, so not quite the iconic green. And he's sitting with one security guard, and they're talking. So I ripped open my suitcase. I was like, I have to have something that's made of paper in here. And I always kept a Sharpie in my purse for some reason, and I never took it out after this day. And I found my sketchbook because I was drawing on the flights and stuff. And I walked over, clutching it like how kids clutch the books. And I'm like 16, 17 at the time. I walk over and I said, excuse me, sir, are you Mr. Stan Lee? He said, yes, I am. I said, Mr. Stan Lee, would you sign my sketchbook? And he said, yeah, of course. I handed him the Sharpie. I handed him the book. My dad comes back at this point, and he was an OG comics guy. He clocks Stan Lee, and of course he's like, my God. And I'm like, don't be weird, Dad. Don't be weird. Stan asked to look through the sketchbook. He goes, did you draw these yourself? And I said, yeah, these are very good. Of course, in the back of my sketchbook was an Avengers comic that I was using as my drawing reference. I forgot that I had the comic book, so he signed the sketchbook instead of the comic book.
Oh.
It's mine. But he handed it back. I made sure it dried, and I said, thank you so much for all these characters you created, because he did see my drawing of Black Widow, and I said, thank you so much. This is huge to me. And he said, I do it for people like you. And I was like, I'm going to take that to the bank forever. So now anytime I think about it, it's like he does it for people like me. He does it for people like you, the Merry Marvel Marching Society, the fans, the true believers. And then to top that story off, the cherry on top of that ice cream sundae is his in-flight entertainment. He picked watching the Avengers. So I was about 2 or 3 rows behind him. He was in first class. I watched Stan Lee watch his cameo in the Avengers film.
So meta. That's amazing.
I'm sorry. It's a long story, but it was one of those moments where I never at a convention did I have the opportunity or timing to meet him or get something signed. But it was really precious. And I'm not an artist. I mean, I really am not. But the fact that he asked very politely if he could look through the book, and the fact that the Avengers comic slid out at the end afterwards, and I was like, so I could have had that signed, but it was the best interaction I could have hoped for. So,
man.
Yeah.
Enough said, Amy.
Enough said, indeed.
Enough said.
We could go for another hour, but I actually have to get back to the studio soon for the 4:00 Hot Toys live show for all of y'all lovely people. So that about does it. We hope that you guys are as excited about Sideshow Con and comics as us, but today especially, just take a moment to face front true believers and get excited about all of the contributions that Stan Lee gave to Marvel Comics and to the world at large. I mean, these characters that are now hot toys that you are pre-ordering, they came from the minds of the Marvel Bullpen in a humble office somewhere in New York City. And so this was a really cool opportunity. As Sideshow, we are very excited to be partnered with Stan Lee's POW Entertainment to create more Stan Lee collector's items. If you guys have registered for the con, be sure to check out the Legends Stan Lee fine art lithograph by Bill Sienkiewicz. That is limited to only an edition of 100 pieces, hand signed by Bill Sienkiewicz. And then we do have the Excelsior fine art print by Ian McDonald. That one is the fun 3-point superhero pose ground pound. It has Excelsior in the editor's box up top. That is limited edition to 750 pieces. I believe those are currently the registration exclusive purchases, but I think if there is stock available, they will go up on our site very soon. The Ragnarok Hot Toys is also available for pre-order, and you can see the upcoming designer collectible figure on our in the live streams from today, but also it will be available for RSVP on our website.
Totally.
I'm feeling emotional, man. Marvel is my universe, and that's this was a cool opportunity to take a special chance to go through this for the Comics Hall. Thank you guys so much for joining us this entire crazy week of Sideshow Con. Hope you're enjoying it. It's only day 4. We still got an entire weekend ahead of us. Still got more stuff to show you. So thanks on behalf of everyone here at Sideshow. I'm Amy.
I'm Paul.
And this has been the Comics Hall. Nuff said.
Nuff said. Banter, 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 Amy.